Now, this is your first year, first assignment as a parish pastor, right?
Yes.
And then you have two parish to handle.
Yes.
How does it feel to be given such a big task?
Well, when I was at St. Christopher's as an associate when I got the call from the Archdiocese. And I just got done doing a mass at the nursing home, and I was driving back, and I saw that I missed a call, and so I got to the parking lot. I just stayed in my truck, and I called back. At the time, it was, what was his name? Oh, it's going to kill me now. He was the vicar for clergy at the time, and I called him back, and he explained I was going to be going to Terre Haute, and he explained that it was going to be St. Patrick's and St. Margaret Mary's, and all the stuff that was involved with the school, and then having the Spanish Mass here and all that kind of stuff, and I just remember feeling very overwhelmed, just thinking, I've never been a pastor before, and now I'm getting two parishes and a school, and it's 2 hours away from where I grew up. So all that kind of thrown together, I was very anxious about the whole thing until I got out here, and then it just all kind of fell into place. Right. So I grew up with a traditional style church, St. John's in Enochsburg, but I've been in amphitheater style churches before, and so coming in here, my first impression was how everyone's able to participate in the Mass well, and especially I will say this is probably the easiest space to give a homily in. Because you can see how people react, right? So at St. Patrick's, love that space, beautiful space, but you try to preach there and you have no idea what the back half of the church is doing. If they're engaged, if they're falling asleep, you have no idea. But here, you can look out and you can just see everybody and you can see their engagement and noddings of heads, and all that kind of stuff. So this physical space works for that participation and for the preaching to take place. So it works very well for that.
Okay. Now, how about the congregation? What was your first impression with the congregation?
My first impression was they were very talkative.
Really?
because it's my first Mass, right? I got here for the 4 o'clock Mass, and I'm getting ready to hear confessions, and all I hear out here is jibber jabber, jibber jabber, jibber jabber. But then it's part of the culture. It's just it's what we do. We come here and we talk and we reconnect with people we haven't seen for a week, and so there's kind of a beauty to that culture. The other thing I love about St. Margaret Mary's people is just how laid back and the great sense of humor they have. When I give a homily, people just laugh. They just enjoy coming to church. There's a great joy in this parish that you don't see that everywhere. I remember getting up and introducing myself, and talking about my vocation to the priesthood. And afterwards, it was almost like trying to drink water from a fire hydrant, because as I stood at the door over there, everyone's going by and they're telling me their names and their kids' names and who they're related to, and I'm just sitting here at the end of it I didn't catch anybody's name because there were so many, but at the same time, it was very welcoming, and so I knew, as overwhelmed as I felt getting the call to come out here, that everything was going to be okay. Because the people here were going to take care of me. They were going to make sure that things went well, that I wasn't doing this on my own. It was very much a team effort. And so, that was very clear from the beginning. Right, and I will say that is unique because before, when I was at St. Christopher's, I was just part of the staff, right? I was the associate, I wasn't in charge. Mm-hmm. And so there was something very relaxing in that. If there was some drama happening or whatever at St. Chris's, I didn't care, because I wasn't super involved in that way. I wasn't in charge. But here, there is a sense that the buck stops here, so whatever happens, there is a sense of responsibility for that. Now, I will say, though, our staff is amazing. Everyone is just super, super good at what they do. Now, there are times where they're so good and so passionate that they'll kind of step on each other's toes, that tends to happen. But it's because they're in love with what they're doing. They're very passionate about it. And you can feel that in the day-to-day working of the office. There's just an air of efficiency and a love of God going on. So I feel very blessed with our staff.
Now, what do you like most about St. Margaret Mary's Church?
The Filipino food. Oh, that was way up there. I remember the first Wednesday that I was here, and the Filipinos kind of invited me to join them for dinner that night. It was just phenomenal. I mean, just the joy of this space, just how joyful the people are, and the multicultural element. I think I could say that, the Filipinos, but then we have the Hispanic Mass
When you
that I
were
help with.
when you were at St. Christopher, were you exposed with the different cultures of the
We did have a Filipino community there, which was really nice, but not nearly as big or as vibrant as what we have here at St. Margaret Mary's. And I never knew what Zimbangabi was, until I got out here, and so to be a part of that has been awesome. And I had zero dealings with the Hispanic community before here. In fact, I'm still learning to do the Spanish Mass, and they put up with me, which is fine. But
That's amazing, though.
It's a lot of fun, and to be able to interact with the kids, and to really kind of make a connection there, like it's really good. Our biggest thing now, and especially with the 100th anniversary coming up, is the physical side of things. So you mentioned a lot of the programs and a lot of the things we put on for our parishioners, which I think are working very, very well. But it only highlights, because our programs are so good and we have so many ministries, the needs that we have on the physical side. Because we look at our buildings and they're not as conducive to our ministries as we'd like. So, for instance, we're looking in this church to do a few upgrades to the ceiling and to the carpeting, getting some new furnishings like a new baptismal font. These are things that we're actively working towards. Then the office building, which gets a ton of use, probably more than most people realize, because that's the nervous system of the parish, right? Like anything happens during the week, it's going through that office. And it needs new windows, it's got some water damage, so that's something else. And then I would love to tackle that school building. Like I would love to get in there, but I also recognize that is a huge project, and maybe for another pastor past me, but still it's on my radar to get some of these things taken care of. At the very beginning, we had a few parents that were concerned whether they could get their kids here on Wednesday nights as opposed to Sunday mornings, but I think it's working well. We had more kids this year than we've had in the past, so we saw an increase in our numbers. And I think for the kids' sake, it feels very much more vibrant because we combine the two programs as well. So each grade is much larger than it was before, and I think the kids can feel that, and they feel much more engaged with their teachers, and it just, the culture, I think, fits a lot better. Our hope is, moving forward, that the superintendent of schools here is pushing to get rid of everything on Wednesday nights that get in the way of churches doing events or families getting together. So we're hoping that we're part of that solution, helping families to spend time together and to learn more about their faith. And the hope is that it really grows into a truly family event, where a family could come drop off the kids for their classes, the parents could go to a class as well, the little kids could go to babysitters, and we could even get to the point where we're offering meals on Wednesday nights. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, take a page out of the Filipino book, but that'd be like a pitchin, and so it would feel like a family meal even on Wednesday nights. So yeah, this is kind of our goal, to really kind of revamp the family and get it back where God is at the center of that. Yeah, and it definitely is a cultural thing, because back then, if you were a Catholic in the United States, you really lived at your parish, right? Yeah. Like so much of what you did and your community and the meals that you shared and the events you went to, it was all at your parish, right? And so you're right, like the kids got to see the priests and the nuns, and they thought, well, maybe that's for me. Yeah. And what we find today is we're fighting against the culture, because our kids, they just get swept up in everything. I mean, with the internet and with YouTube, and not that any of that is evil. I love YouTube. I am on there so often. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I'm not saying it's evil, but we do see that the church doesn't hold that center place for a lot of our kids anymore that it used to. And so I think that's affected our vocations. I think it's affected how kids live their life, and find meaning in their life. So many of them feel lost or alone, and I think it's just because, they don't have that home base that they used to have. A lot of it deals with where we're at, so like Vigo County is one of the poorest counties in the state of Indiana. And so time and again, one of the things we run up against is not only do we have needs at the parish that it's hard to meet financially and otherwise, just because of the demographic that we have, but we are exporting a lot of our goods and materials and finances to help the neighborhood, to help the city. And so one of the bigger challenges we find is how does St. Margaret Mary's do that? How do we do that well, where we're reaching out? And we've expanded that. I mean, we've got the Salvation Army that we help with. We just had Jack talk about the soup that we're going to be collecting for January. But then we started Christmas caroling in the neighborhood. We do that in December, which we didn't do before. So that's another way to reach out. There's been some discussion about, can we provide something as far as like maybe like an after-school program for the kids? And not that we've gotten deep into that discussion, but it's an idea, that's been brought forward. So that's been a big challenge, is how do we minister to the people of our neighborhood well? Yeah, and that's kind of the hope, is that this becomes a hub where when people participate in the programs, it's going to reach out and make a difference in people's lives. But I would say the other big challenge, is, as I mentioned earlier, just reaching our youth, and that's come up multiple times. How do we engage our youth, not only here at St. Margaret Mary's, but across the board, where we're making them lifelong disciples of Christ? And it is a huge challenge, and no one has a really clear answer except forging those relationships, making a point to be there for those kids, and teaching them what it means to pray, what it means to have a trust in God, and how that can make a difference. So I'd say those are our two biggest challenges: is the community that we're in, the needs that are there, and then ministering to the youth. Yeah, it is. I'm always a nervous wreck when I do it. Yes, and
Are you doing good so far?
I'm doing okay. So like today's a good example where. Because it's a feast day, the Epiphany, like there are different readings that we do and different prayers, and so like it's stuff that's outside of my normal vocabulary, and so when I'm reading this stuff, I'm just like, I don't know what this word means, and so I really have to study up ahead of time and get my homily put together. But I will say they are very gracious about it, and I think they are just happy, to be able to have Mass in their native tongue, to be able to worship in Spanish. And so they're very forgiving, and they kind of are like, we get it, you're making an effort, you're trying to help us with this. And it's not just me, we've got 4 other priests that also rotate for the month. And so it's good having that variety, different priests bring different perspectives. Some of us are more fluent than others, but they bring such a richness to our parish with Our Lady of Guadalupe, and a lot of their celebrations throughout the year. Like today, they'll be celebrating their Three Kings Day, which is a big feast for them. So yeah, it's good stuff.
You also try to speak Tagalog for Simbang Gabi Mass, which is amazing.
I was told it was cute.
Cute means endearing, Father.
Oh, there we go.
It's a compliment. It's a compliment. So,
yeah.
So, with all the culture, it's really good. We appreciate the fact that you make an effort.
I wish I could do more, though, right? Like, so this is one of those things where it's like you see like the need, to speak Spanish, to be fluent in Spanish, the confessions that could be heard in Spanish, and I just realized that's something I don't have that talent yet.
Have you tried that? The confession in Spanish?
No. Which my professors at St. Minor would kill me, because we had to learn everything in Spanish for confession. But I have yet to do it, mainly because so much of it is a dialogue, right? In the confessional, where you're talking with somebody. So I guess I have heard Spanish confessions, but I respond in English, and exactly. But at the same time, seminary did a good job preparing us for that. They recognized that in the United States today, like any Catholic parish is going to have that diversity, because we are a melting pot. We have people coming from various cultures, whether it be Filipino, Hispanic, Polish, German, Spanish, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Like you can go through the list. So they did a good job preparing us, but I really did, thinking, here we are in, southern Indiana, like so many of our country parishes are very, homogeneous. They're just one race. So to have multiple nationalities represented is really neat. When we were in seminary, they gave us different styles, right, that we could use, different methods of giving homilies, and they're very, very good, and they're very much based on what keeps people's attention. How do you give it some emotional weight that they carry it with them, they take it with them out into the world, and so I learned from the best at St. Minor. We just had some great priests down there, and our professors were awesome. What I made a mistake on, though, is when I first started as a priest, and even as a deacon, I would write them out. Like, I would take the time to make a Word document, and I would write them out completely. And I would stand up there, and I would just read off the page. And they were very similar. They'd have a story, and there'd be something humorous, and then I tied it. Like, it was very similar in that regard, but it was just read off the page. And people, you could just tell, like, it wasn't as engaging, it wasn't as alive. And so one weekend, completely by accident, like it was just a busy week, I didn't even write one. So I had the idea in my head, but I didn't actually spend the time writing it out. And so I was freaking out, because I was like, I'm used to reading off the page, and I have nothing. I have it in my head, but I don't have anything on a piece of paper. So I got up there and I was as nervous as could be, but I gave the homily, and people just came up and they're like, Father, that's the first time we felt that you were talking with us, rather than just reading off a page. Yeah, you were in a dialogue. You were actually relating to us. And so I kept practicing that. How do I give a homily without having a sheet of paper in front of me? And then over time, it just grew, and so I began to realize people love stories. They love stories, funny stories, if you can get those in. Those are great. People love music. These are the things that people can relate to, and that's what you do. You
Catch your attention.
Yeah, it's almost like fly fishing. You like put it out there, and you get the hook in. And as soon as you do that and they relate and they're like, yeah, I know that song, or I have a similar story to that, or I like Star Wars, then you can reel them in, and then you can say, okay, but there's a faith element here. And my real hope is that people will do the same thing in their life, and they'll have stories that they can relate to the gospel. They'll hear a song and be like, that's Christ talking to me. That's the hope, is that it's not just seeing me do it week to week, but then that everyone else starts doing it too. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, what kills me is I give these homilies and people are just thirsty for it. They are so hungry for these messages and for something fresh. Not completely new. We're breaking from tradition. We're breaking from the past. But if anything, we're diving into it and exposing it and saying, yeah, and saying this is your faith. This is what you've signed up for, and the beauty of it and what's good about it. My goal is to ruin every pop song, so that when you hear it, you think about God.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, related to God.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tweak it a little bit if I notice something is off, like there's not a good transition in a certain spot, or I didn't quite make the connection I was hoping to make. So it's weird. The 4 o'clock Mass here is either the best homily of the weekend or the worst. Because sometimes that raw, like just getting out there and just talking about it for the first time, I'm energized and it comes across really clearly, and then it's hard to recapture that for the other 3 Masses. Or the first Mass, I'm like, that was horrible. Like that, it wasn't even close to what I wanted it to be. And then I spend the next few Masses tweaking and making it better. So I would say the biggest thing for me, and what I really try to push, like in my homilies and how I engage with people, is to really promote to people the beauty of the church. Because I feel like, and not that there's anything wrong with this, but we have so hammered on the sexual morality of the church, right, and what the church teaches in these regards, which is good, and we need to do that. I think that's fine. But if that's what you're leading with, this is what the church teaches about homosexuality or contraception or abortion, if that's your opening line, no wonder people aren't coming to church.
Yeah.
I think you can get there eventually. You got to talk about it. Like, you can't just shove it to the side and forget about it. But you start with the beauty of the church. And Bishop Robert Barron, this is one of his big things that he pushes, is, how do we tell people, look, we have this awesome tradition and this richness of Scripture and the architecture and the artwork and the music and the Eucharist, the sacraments that we have. I mean, so all this beautiful, beautiful stuff, but people just hear the you can't do this, you can't do that. Right, exactly. So to start from a different place and promote the beauty, and then it leads to goodness of life, and then it leads to truth. It leads to talking about those deeper issues. So I would say the biggest thing in the church right now is how do we dialogue with people? How do we encounter Joe Schmo on the street, who knows nothing about Catholicism? If anything, he knows lies about Catholicism. He thinks he knows what the church teaches, but it's not really what the church teaches. So that's a challenge. How do you engage people with that? And I will say, like, we've been blessed because our people have been very good about bringing guests with them, family members or friends from work. And they come to church and they see that at some level. They come here and they can see the beauty of the church. So I think that's one of our big things, is to really promote the beauty. And if we can do that, it's going to go a long way in solving a lot of problems in the church. Because everything else, the vocation crisis, the thing with our youth, not coming to church, people falling away from the faith, all broken marriages, broken faith, all of that can be solved if we really highlight what the church has to offer and the beauty of the church. Yeah, exactly. They have been my biggest cheerleaders. I mean, so I usually head home on Sunday nights, and I'm home on Monday. And they've actually adjusted their schedules to make this work, where every Monday night we get together as a whole family. So, mom and dad, but then all the brothers and sisters and all the nieces and nephews, so the whole family gets together every Monday night and shares in a meal, and they do that because they know I'm going to be home. And I'm not there for all the other stuff that happens throughout the week. And for me, that's a big deal because I didn't want to be that uncle that never knew his nieces and nephews except at Christmas and Easter, you know. I wanted to just be a part of their life. And it's great going home and Isabel will run up and she'll be like, Uncle Danny, you know, it's just like, it's great, you know. So they're just great about all this, and they pray for me. They're there for me when, you know, I need to talk about whatever, and they're just great. And they bend over backwards to help me, you know, to do this ministry. And that's because they're the ones who spark this in me. You know, they're strong in their faith. You know, they have a deep respect for the priesthood. And when I go home, sometimes we'll celebrate Mass together, you know, which is really neat as a family. And so yeah, they're just phenomenal. And I realize how blessed I am in that. And it's kind of funny when they do visit because people know them, like from the homilies and the stories, you know, and so they know what to talk about. They know, you know, my dad loves to hunt, you know, they know that mom, you know, got stuck in the shed one day, you know, like all these different stories that have happened. And my hope for the future of St. Margaret Mary is that every one of my parishioners becomes a saint.
Well, that's good.
You know, like that is the goal. Yeah, exactly. So that's what my prayer is for all the time, you know, and when people come to me and they have questions or they have whatever, like that is the goal, is to get everyone to that point. And everything else serves that, right? So anything we do with the buildings, anything we do with our programming, religious ed, the Wednesday nights, the whatever, that's the goal, is that everyone here becomes a saint. And it's a team effort. You know, I realize I can't do it on my own. Like I have to have my staff and the good people of St. Margaret Mary's to make it happen. So
what is your message for the congregation?
Pray. And it's so cliche, and I get that, like that's what we always talk about is praying, but I've just seen it. I just see lives transformed by it. I see a peace of mind and a calm. It works. I mean, that's just it. Like, it works. And I think so many people just kind of dismiss it because we talk about it so much. And they're like, oh, that's your answer for everything. Just pray about it. It's like, yes, yes, that is the answer. You know, talk to God. Like, bring him into your life. So, yes, that would be my message, to pray. I'm hoping I get a second term, and that means I would have another.
For it,
that would mean I'd have another. What would that be? 9 years. No.
6, 8.
8 years. Right. I just, at this point, I mean, being here 3.5 years and starting a lot of this, I want to see a lot of this through, you know, I mean, so I'm hoping the Archdiocese doesn't pull me anytime soon. I hope to be here for a while.
Father, thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Father.
All right. Thank you.